Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. So today I came across an article on Investopedia entitled The Risks of Investing in Art and Collectibles. I am going to put a link in the description below, but I am going to go through and we're going to analyze this particular article together because I think it sets up a good discussion on taxes and collectibles because, spoiler alert, in the year 2021, they did pass a law where some of you guys out there who are not adequately reporting all of your buy and sell activity with regards to collectibles, collectible finance, investing, speculating in these items. At the end of the year of 2022, you are most likely going to get a 1099 in the mail from a lot of these e-commerce platforms like eBay and the like if you sell more than $600 within the calendar year on that particular platform. So this is going to be a good segue into talking about taxes and collectibles and how all this relates. So in this video, I'm just going to go through this article entitled The Risks of Investing in Art and Collectibles. And this was done by Dan Moskowitz. There'll be a link to the article in the video description below so you guys can read it in full. And we are going to discuss this because there are some good points in this particular article and there's also some not so good points. I do not like the way they set up this particular article. More on that in a bit. But I do agree that there are a ton of risks of investing in art and collectibles that the average person does not really understand, just from the perspective of the fact that these markets are extremely niche, and also due to the fact that there are a lot of heavy costs and there's also a lot of time involvement if you are getting into the antiques and collectibles trade from a buying and selling standpoint. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people talk about. There's a lot of hours involved, whereas if you own traditional assets like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, even certain types of real estate and or cryptocurrency even, there's not so much involvement on the part of the participant. For instance, if you have 10 shares of AT&T stock right now, let's just use that example, and you want to sell those 10 shares, you just click a button and within 72 hours, that money's deposited in your investment account. That's as simple as that, guys. There's no risk of having to pack the item, having to print a shipping label, having to take it to the post office, having to send it through the mail, having to potentially get scammed of that item. It's just cut and dry when you invest in financial assets. So I will state this, that there are a lot of risks and expenses to investing in art and collectibles that the average collector, speculator, and even investor in some cases does not consider before going this direction. Most collectibles also are not as liquid as a lot of you guys claim they are. For instance, if you have a collection of high-grade CGC graded vintage comic books, you can argue that yes, those particular items have a lot of value on the secondary market. However, if you want to maximize your profits by selling that collection, you're going to most likely have to consign that collection to a higher end collectibles auction house, whether it be Heritage, Hakes, Comic Link, Morphe's, Sotheby's, Christie's in certain instances. And there's going to be a lot of leeway to the point where just because you drop off your collection doesn't mean they're going to cut you a check for the full amount tomorrow. It's going to have to be cataloged. It's going to have to be photographed. It's going to have to be appraised. Then they're going to have to advertise that to potential bidders in the form of sending out mailers or putting some of those particular pieces on their website and letting people just know, hey, this collection's coming up for bid. So I just want to make that very clear. There's a lot of people that are really, how do I want to say this, naive when you start to analyze a lot of the risk and reward ratio of investing in antiques and collectibles over the short term and over the long term. So with that being said, I'm going to go right into this article and we're going to review it together. Here we go. Collectibles are an alternate investment, which means they're not stocks, bonds, real estate, or cash. 100% correct. Some investors jump into collectibles with both feet, assuming they can make their fortune in a world filled with schemes, con artists, and fraud. Okay, now full disclosure, as somebody in the trade, as somebody has a channel, a presence right here on YouTube and tells you guys to be cautious about these markets, I will state that's starting this article off stating that assuming they can make their fortune in a world filled with schemes, con artists, and fraud is pretty negative in my assessment. It is true. You have to be very careful who you sell to. You have to be careful how you analyze the markets, who you get involved with, what type of risks you take. But at the end of the day, the whole collectibles marketplace is not fraught with schemes, con artists, and fraud. I just want to make that clear. So I do disagree with the way this particular author presented that. While it's true, it's not, in my opinion, 100% factual. He goes on to state, knowing this market means recognizing these threats. That's 100% true. You can make a fortune in buying and selling collectibles, but few do. That's also 100% true. What is it that I tell you guys? 90% of you watching this particular video and thinking of getting involved in these markets would be better off putting your money in a total stock market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund for the long term, rather than ever spending $1 on antiques and collectibles from a financial standpoint. And that is what I continue to preach on this particular channel, because as somebody who has been active in these markets for decades now, it is my responsibility to alert you of those risks. The article goes on to state, if you think you're capable of identifying these threats and finding bargains that can be sold for fortunes at future dates, then go for it. But keep in mind, there are many disadvantages to investing in collectibles. Understanding the risks of investing in art and collectibles, costs and fees. So this is the first talking point that this author makes. You'll always hear stories about someone spending a few dollars at a garage sale or finding something in the attic and selling it for a fortune. This does happen, but it's not likely to happen to you. If you really want to make money in collectibles, you're going to need to spend money on valuable items. That is 100% true, guys. When I show you my long-term holdings, for example, in coins and currency, what is it that I'm usually holding up? I'm usually holding up items that are valued in the thousands of dollars each category. The reason for that is, if you are attempting to invest long-term in these markets, there is a significant risk of capital over the long term to acquire more scarce and more uncommon items in high grade that already have collector demand. That is how you accentuate your risk versus reward ratio. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to go after a rare comic book or a rare coin, you're going to want to go after something that already is in the public's eye, meaning collectors already view it as a rare piece or something that is sought after present day, because that is the best barometer for predicting if it's going to be sought after in the future, with some exceptions. And we've talked about those exceptions on this channel. So the key takeaways of this point, before we get to another point in this article, is collectibles are a more difficult investment to understand than average investments, as they come with many risks that more traditional investments do not. I agree with that fully, guys. Major risks associated with collectibles include high costs and fees, a lack of investment income or dividends until sale, prevalence of counterfeits, and a greater than average risk of destruction of the assets. And that's all true as well, guys. Remember, if you invest in an antique, if you invest in a comic book, if you invest in a collectible, if you invest in a rare coin, if you invest in a Pokemon card, that particular item does not pay you an income stream. There are no dividends, there are no interest income coming off of that collectible until the object is sold. Then you will experience, if the item goes up in value and you sell it, you will experience a capital gain exchange, meaning you will make money off of that sale of that particular item. But while you're holding it, it pays you no interest, it pays you no dividend. That is a very good point. Another point that I like that they bring up is the greater than average risk of destruction of the asset. You know, if you own a mutual fund, if you own a stock, if you own a bond, if you own an ETF, most likely those are electronic assets. You don't have to worry about somebody dumping a cup of hot coffee on your shares of an S&P 500 index fund and completely ruining them. It's not going to happen. It's an abstract investment. It's an electronic investment that is being stored in cyberspace, in computers, in binary code, ones and zeros for the most part. So that is good that they do bring that up. Next, it is a mistake to believe that collectibles are immune to the performance of the greater financial markets. In general, the better the overall market, the better the collectible markets. That's 100% true, guys. And I brought this up in another video that's going to be premiering soon on market risk, talks a little bit about that. A lot of you guys are kidding yourself. Just because collectibles are increasing in value at an extremely high rate right now in the year 2021 going into 2022 is basically due to the fact that the overall financial markets and real estate markets are also going bonkers at present time. There is a direct correlation there. The people with money that invest in higher end collectible assets, they primarily have their money invested in other traditional asset classes like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and real estate. That is important to keep in mind. If those particular asset classes drop in value, the collectible assets that you cherish will also drop in value. Now, I'm not saying they're going to drop as much. I'm not saying they're going to go to zero. But what I am saying, there is an equatable risk there that a lot of you guys are not aware of because you've never been through a bear market in the antiques and collectibles trade. Keep that in mind. This article goes on to state, if you plan to hold those items for a long time, they will probably appreciate, but probably isn't a guarantee. It's what I talk about a lot on this channel. It's still possible that you will spend a large amount of money and never see a return. It happens every single day in the antiques and collectibles trade. If you don't believe me, talk to anybody who is a licensed appraiser, talk to any auctioneer, talk to any dealer out there, and they will tell you that you are more likely to lose money over the long term if you are not careful than make money in the antiques and collectibles trade. The article goes on to state, also, if you're going to pay for handling, storage, marketing, and insurance, you're going to be paying high fees. It's 100% true. In many cases, you will also have to most likely pay for maintenance and restoration. Okay, let's be realistic here. If you're buying a CGC graded comic book, even if you're buying a rare graded coin, even a rare graded video game, you're most likely not going to have to pay for restoration. Restoration is mainly on the antique side of the equation with few exceptions. Obviously, you can argue certain markets like vintage advertising, maybe vintage toys. Yes, restoration does become a paramount expense in some of those markets, but it is not the norm. If you really want to be good at buying and selling collectibles, you're probably going to need to lose money first. That is 100% true. I don't care what a lot of you tell me in the comment section. Sean, I've never lost money in antiques and collectibles. Then I ask you your age, or I ask you how long you've been doing this, and you tell me 3 years, or 5 years, or even in some cases 10 years, and you're under the age of 30. Guess what? If you're in the antiques and collectibles trade long enough, you're going to lose money. You're going to get slapped in the face with a stale donut. You're going to get kicked in the balls. Things are going to happen, guys. It's no different if you tell me, hey, I married my high school sweetheart and we're happily married. She was the first woman I ever loved and everything is going great. And I ask you, how old are you? And you tell me that you're 27 years of age. I'm here to tell you a lot can go wrong in a relationship, just like a lot can go wrong in an investment. I'm not telling you got to dwell on the negative, but I'm telling you, you at least got to be aware of it. This article goes on to state, there is no substitute for experience, and the best experience is trial and error. Hence why I do this YouTube channel, to try to help you guys who are trying to navigate these markets, thinking that all markets in the antiques and collectibles trade only go up in value. I am sorry, at some point, you're going to learn the truth that a lot of these markets do drop in value, and just because they drop doesn't mean that they go back up. Some actually drop and stay there. It's very dangerous. Now let's talk about tax obligations and lack of income or dividends, because this article does a good job of this. The capital gains tax on the sale of a collectible, if it appreciates in value, is a hefty 28%. If you sell a collectible in less than 1 year, it will be taxed as ordinary income. A lot of you guys that are playing the flipping game, pretty soon, towards the end of 2022, if you sell in a lot of these sites, you're going to get hit with a 1099. You're going to learn that any profits you make buying and selling antiques and collectibles are taxed as ordinary income. You're going to have write-offs to offset those gains if you are smart. I will be doing videos on this. And keep in mind, it will be done in a legal manner, meaning I will be giving you the best advice that I can give you to keep your business legal in that regard. Unlike other types of investments, you will not be paid for investing in collectibles. We already talked about this. You will receive absolutely nothing from a monetary standpoint until the item is sold. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This article states lack of information and difficult comps. If you don't know what comps is, it stands for comparisons. When you trade stocks, bonds, commodities, and currencies, you have access to a wealth of information that can help lead you in the right direction. While there is still information available on collectibles, the amount of detail you can learn about a collectible is limited compared to trading anything in public markets. Let me read that point again because I agree 100%. The amount of detail you can learn about a collectible is limited compared to trading anything in public markets. In other words, if you want to learn about a stock, you want to learn about a company, you can read the 10K report that comes out every year. You have access to all that information thanks to regulations brought to you by the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. They do exist for a purpose, guys. When it comes to collectibles, you can have inside information that gives you an advantage. For those of you that are still watching this video 16 minutes in, and those of you that watched every single video I did on this particular YouTube channel, many, many years back, I did a video where I talked about insider information as it relates to the antiques and collectibles trade and gave you an example where I said I was bidding on a coin and thought that I had all the available information to my knowledge. Somebody outbidded me on it, and that coin ended up selling for a considerable sum several months, several years later. And it's very important, if you watch that video, you can have insider information in the antiques and collectibles trade. You can use it to your advantage, and it is not illegal. I want to make that very clear. It's not even unethical in most cases. So keep that in mind, guys. It is important to look at comps, which really stands for comparables. But if a comparable antique is appraised at $10,000, that doesn't mean your antique will be appraised for the same amount. A lot will depend on the condition and or sale of that said collectible and when you decide to sell. Now let's talk about illiquidity, counterfeits, and potential for destruction. Selling collectibles can be challenging because it's often difficult to find a buyer. Believe it or not, guys, that's 100% true. You are dealing in serious niche markets here. Not everybody, contrary to what you find on the internet, on collecting forums, in collecting publications, even in articles that I write for Antiques and Auction News, articles that are put out by Antique Trader, Journal of Antiques and Collectibles. I'm sorry to disappoint some of you watching this video right now, but not everybody out there is interested in acquiring a factory sealed copy of Super Mario Brothers, or a PSA 10 condition Pokemon card, or a PSA 9 Magic the Gathering dual land, or even, dare I say it, an 1854 $3 gold piece. Not everybody is interested in acquiring those assets. The markets are very niche. The article goes on to state, counterfeits are everywhere in the collectibles market. Take every precaution to make sure you don't fall into this trap. Well, those of you that are investing in third-party graded collectibles, you're already taking a step in the right direction in that regard, provided you are utilizing top-tier, well-respected third-party grading companies. So I will state, if you are on the collectible side of the trade, at least to a certain degree, you are already protected by that, assuming, again, you are going with respected top-tier third-party grading companies for your collectibles. If there is a fire or flood in the home, the value of your collectibles may go to zero. That's 100% true. There are many other scenarios that can lead to destruction of a collectible. Plan accordingly. I've been saying that since the beginning of time, since I started this particular channel. Let's talk a little bit, finally, last point here, stock market performance. You often will read that collectibles aren't tied to the performance of the stock market. This is true to an extent, but it's not entirely true. When the stock market is flying, investors have more disposable income, which leads to increased purchases of collectibles. 100% true. Don't believe me? Look at what's happening right now in the year 2021 going into 2022. When the stock market falls, go back to 2008, 2009 if you want examples on this, guys. Investors have less disposable income, which negatively impacts the collectibles market. And that's how I am going to end this particular video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Again, if you want to read the whole article for yourself, the link is in the video description below. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.